These glasses work a lot better. Yeah, anyway, but this is unplugged. What thing are these things? There we go. There we go. Oh, yeah, that's much. It was away past midnight and had a tremendous day in the matter of excitement and fatigue. But that was no matter to Joan when there was business at hand. She did not think of bed. The generals followed her to her official quarters, and she delivered her orders to them as fast as she could, and they sent them off to their different commands as fast as delivered. Wherefore the messengers galloping hither and thither raised a world of clatter and racket in the still streets, and soon were added to this the music of distant bugles and the roll of drums, notes of preparation, for the vanguard would break camp at dawn. The generals were soon dismissed, but I wasn't, not Joan, for it was my turn to work. Now Joan walked the floor and dictated a summons to the Duke of Burgundy to lay down his arms and make peace and exchange pardons with the king, or if he must fight, go fight the Saracens. Prenez-moi l'une à l'autre de bon cœur, autrement, ainsi que devons faire loyaux chrétiens. Et s'il vous plaît, de guerre, guerre is war, guerre, warrior, that's a warrior, de guerre, aller contre le Saracen. Oh, that's all. Pardonne-moi, pardonnez, pardonne-vous, you, you are l'autre, you're another, de bon cœur, you're another good heart, entirely, entièrement, ainsi que ils vont faire loyal Christians, something with loyal Christians. And s'il vous plaît, and if you please, a warrior, go fight the Allez contre les Saracens. It was long, but it was good, and had the sterling ring to it. It is my opinion that it was fine and simple and straightforward and eloquent a state paper as she had ever uttered. It was delivered into the hands of a courier, and he galloped away with it. Then Joan dismissed me and told me to go to the inn and stay, and in the morning give to her father the parcel which she had left there. It contained presents for the Domremy relatives and friends, and a peasant dress which she had bought for herself. She said she would say goodbye to her father and uncle in the morning, if it should still be their purpose to go, instead of tarrying a while to see the city. I didn't say anything, of course, but I could have said that wild horses couldn't keep those men in the town half a day. They waste the glory of being the first to carry the great news to Domremy. The tax is remitted forever, and here the bells clang and clatter, and the people cheer and shout. Oh, not they. Pâté and Orleans and the coronation were events which, in a vague way, these men understood to be colossal, but they were colossal mists, films, abstractions. This was a gigantic reality. When I got there, do you suppose they were abed? Quite the reverse. They and the rest were as mellow could be, and the paladin was doing his battles over in great style, and the old peasants were endangering the building with their applause. He was doing pâté now, and was bending his big frame forward and laying out the positions and movements with a take here and a take there and a rake there of his formidable sword on the floor, and the peasants were stooped over with their hands spread knees, observing with excited eyes, and ripping out ejaculations of wonder and admiration all along. Who uses that? Yes, here we were, waiting for the word, our horses fidgeting and snorting and dancing to get away. We lying back on the bridles till our bodies fairly slanted to the rear. The word rang out at last, go! And we went. Went? There was nothing like it ever seen. Where we swept by squads of scampering English, the mere wind of our passage laid them flat in piles and rows. Then we plunged into the ruck of Falstaff's frantic battle corps and tore through it like a hurricane, leaving a causeway of the dead stretching far behind. No tarrying, no slacking rein, but on and on and in the distance lay our prey. Talbot and his host looming vast and dark like a storm cloud brooding on the sea. Down we swooped upon them, glooming all the air with a quivering pail of dead leaves flying up by the whirlwind of our flight. In another moment we should have struck there as it would strikes world when disorbited constellations crash into the Milky Way. But by misfortune and the inscrutable dispensation of God, I was recognized. Talbot turned white and shouting, "Save yourselves! It is the standard bearer of Joan of Arc!" Drove his spurs home till they met in the middle of his horse's entrails and fled the field with his billowing multitudes at his back. I could have cursed myself for not putting on a disguise. I saw reproach in the eyes of her excellency and was bitterly ashamed. I had caused what seemed an irreparable disaster. Another might have gone aside to grieve, as not in any way to mend it. But I thank God I am not of those. Great occasions only summon, as with a trumpet call, the slumbering reserves of my intellect. Great occasions only summon, as with a trumpet call, the slumbering reserves of my intellect. I saw my opportunity in an instant. In the next, I was away. Through the woods, I vanished like an extinguished light. Away, around through the curtaining forest, I sped, as if on wings, none knowing where was become of me, none suspecting my design. Minute after minute passed on and on. I flew, and still on, and at last, with a great cheer, I flung my banner to the breeze and burst out in front of Talbot. Oh, it was a mighty thought. That weltering chaos of distracted men whirled and surged backwards like a tidal wave which had struck the continent, and the day was ours. Poor helpless creatures, they were in a trap. They were surrounded. They could not escape to the rear, for there was our army. They could not escape to the front, for there was I. Their hearts shriveled in their bodies, their hands fell lifeless to their sides. They stood still, and at our leisure we slaughtered them to a man, all except Talbot and Falstaff, whom I saved and brought away, one under each arm. Well, there is no denying it. The paladin was in great form that night. Such style, such noble grace of gesture, such grandeur of attitude, such energy when he was going, such steady rise on such sure wings, such nicely graduated expenditures of voice according to the weight of matter, such skillfully calculated approaches to his surprises and explosions, such belief-compelling sincerity of tone and manner, such a climaxing peal from his brazen lungs, and such a lightning vivid picture of his mailed form and flaunting banner when he burst up before that despairing army. And oh, the gentle art of his last half of his last sentence, delivered in the careless and indolent tone of one who has finished his real story and only adds a colorless and inconsequential detail because it has happened to occur to him in a lazy way. It was a marvel to see those innocent peasants. Why, they were all pieces with enthusiasm and roared out applauses fit to raise the roof and wake the dead. When they had cooled down at last and they were silent but for their heaving and panting, old Blackshark said admiringly, "As it seems to me, you are an army of your single person." "Yes, that is what it is," said Noel convincingly. "He is a terror, and not just in this vicinity. His mere name carries a shudder with it in distant lands. Just his mere name, and when he frowns, the shadow of it falls as far as Rome, and the chickens go to roost an hour before scheduled time. Yes, and some say, Noel, you are preparing yourself for trouble. I will say just one word to you, and it will be to your advantage too. I saw that the usual thing had got started. No man could prophesy when it would end. So I delivered Joan's message and went off to bed. Joan made her goodbyes to these old fellows in the morning with loving embraces and many tears, and with a packed multitude for sympathizers, and they rode proudly away on their precious horses to carry their great news home. I had seen better riders, I will say that, for horsemanship was a new art to them. The vanguard moved out at dawn and took the road with bands braying and banners flying. The second division followed at 8. Then came the Burgundian ambassadors and lost us the rest of that day into the whole of next. But Joan was on hand, and so they had their journey for their pains. The rest of us took the road at dawn next morning, July 20th, and got how far? 6 leagues? 6 leagues. Trimois was getting to his work with his vacillating king, you see. The king stopped at Saint Marceau and prayed 3 days. Precious time lost for us, precious time gained for Bedford. He would know how to use it. We could not go on without the king. That would be to leave him in the conspirators' camp. Joan argued, reasoned, implored, and at last we got under way. Joan's prediction was verified. It was not a campaign. It was only another holiday excursion. English strongholds lined our roads. They surrendered without a blow. We garrisoned them with Frenchmen and passed on. Bedford was on the march against us with his new army by this time, and on the 25th of July, the hostile forces faced each other and made preparation for battle. But Bedford's good judgment prevailed. He turned and retreated toward Paris. Now was our chance. Our men were in great spirits. Will you believe it? Our poor stick of a king allowed his worthless advisers to persuade him to start back for Gien, whence we had set out when we first marched for rings and coronation. We actually did start back. The 15-day truce had just been concluded with the Duke of Burgundy, and we would go and tarry at Gien until he should deliver Paris to us without a fight. We marched to Bray. Changed his mind once more, and with it we faced toward Paris. Joan dictated a letter to the citizens of Reims to encourage them to keep their heart in spite of the truce, and promised herself that the king had made this truce, and in speaking of it, she was her usual frank self. She said she was not satisfied with it and didn't know whether she would keep it or not. That if she should keep it, we would be solely out of tenderness for the king's honor. All French children know these famous words. How naive they are. 17 réveil qui a été fait, je ne sais pas, content, et je ne sais si je le tiendrai. Si je la tiens, ce sera sûrement pour garder l'honneur de roi, king, Roy, but spelled R-O-I. But in any case, she said, she should not allow the blood royal to be abused and would keep the army in good order and ready for work at the end of the truce. Poor child to fight England. Burgundy and French conspiracy all at the same time. It was too bad. She was a match for the others, but a conspiracy, nobody can match that. When the victims, that is to be injured, is weak and willing. It grieved her these troubled days to be so hindered and delayed and baffled. At times she was so sad, and tears lay near the surface. Once, talking with her good old faithful friend and servant, the Bastard of Orleans, she said, if it might be that please God to let me put off this steel and raiment and go back to my father and mother and tend my sheep again and my sister and my brothers, who would be so glad to see me? By the 12th of August, we were camped near Dampmartin. Later, we had brushed with Bedford's tier guard and had hopes of a big battle on the morrow. But Bedford and all his forces got away in the night and went on toward Paris. Charles sent heralds and received the submission of Beauvais. The Bishop Pierre Panchon, that faithful friend and slave of the English, was not able to prevent it, though he did his best. He was obscure then, but his name was in travel round the globe presently and lived forever as the curse of France. Bear with me now while I spit up in fancy upon his grave. Compiègne surrendered and hauled down the English flag. On the 14th, we camped 2 leagues from Celeste. Bedford turned and approached and took up a strong position. We went against him, but all our efforts to beguile him up from his entrenchments failed, though he had promised us a duel in the open field. Night shut down. Let him look out for the morning. But in the morning he was gone again. We entered Compiègne. The 18th of August, turning out the English garrison and hoisting our own flag. On the 23rd, Joan gave command to move upon Paris. The king and the clique were not satisfied with this and retired sulking to Senlis, which had just surrendered. Within a few days, many strong places submitted. Cléal, Constantinople, Choisy, Bonnet-sur-Orléans, Rémy, La Neuveville-en-Hez, Moguet, Chantilly, Santines. The English power was tumbling, crash after crash, and still the king sulked and disapproved and was afraid of our movement against the capital. Oh, on the 26th of August, 1429, Joan camped at Saint Denis, in effect under the walls of Paris. And still the king hung back and was afraid. If we could but have had him there to back us with authority. Bedford had lost heart, decided to waive resistance, go and concentrate his strength in the best and loyalist province remaining to him, Normandy. Normandy? Ah, if we could only have persuaded the king to come and countenance us presence and approval at his supreme ruin. Saint Cornelia. Normandy? Anyway, I was of Normandy.